Hey everyone, quick intro for today's episode with Nick Hagamman from KC Daily. It's a really great one. I think you're going to love it. He's got kind of a unique angle, unique story on things. First of all, he started under another successful local newsletter, which is interesting. He is in a big city, Kansas City, which is a lot different than most people doing this. He found a really unique sales angle of reaching out to PR firms and marketing agencies, how to get on their radar. He also talks some about some of the viral posts he's had on social media, which is some really good stuff about capitalizing on current trends and kind of quick, minimal effort, but interesting content, which I think is great. So this should be a really great episode. Excited for you to check it out. A couple quick takeaways before we jump in. I have the free Discord. Again, just ideas for me to be able to share and chat more than I do on the podcast or on Twitter, and answer questions that anybody has. So jump in there. The link should be attached. Also that we can help with doing the back end essentially for you if you want help running your local media company, whether helping with meta ads, helping us set up and management a beehive, things like that. We got done for you, done with you, do it yourself, all that stuff. Go check it out on the website, localmediahq.com. And then finally, local newsletter OS. Finally, I believe we got the last piece this week finished up. So next week, I'm going to have a couple people testing it. And then my hope is to have it open and ready to go by early January, essentially. So jump on the wait list. Anyone who's on the wait list is going to get some kind of discount. I want to make it a no-brainer and have really, you're my people. If you're already interested in this stuff and excited to use tools that I'm working on to help me on my agency, my business, this industry, I can promise you, is going to be growing very significantly over the next few years. And so anyone who's already here, you're my people, and I want to keep you in my circle. So jump on the wait list and you'll get a discount once it's released, hopefully in early January. All right, on to the show. Hey everyone, here today with Nick Hagamman from KC Daily. Stoked to have him. He's got a really interesting story. He's in a big metro market, which I think is super interesting, and just really, really excited to chat with him. I think he's going to have a lot of really great insights for everybody. So thanks for being here, Nick.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe let's just do a quick intro, how you got into this. Your story, again, is going to be a little unique. So you're in Kansas City. Yeah, give us the quick rundown.
Yeah, 2-minute version of our story is started KC Daily about 2.5 years ago. I had some friends of mine who started a local newsletter in Northwest Arkansas called NWA Daily. They started roughly 5 years ago, had success with it there, kind of came to me about 3 years ago and we're like, hey, would you want to do something similar in Kansas City? Kind of take the blueprint we built and run with it there. Kicked it around for a while, took it on. So we started sending newsletters in the spring of 2023. I did it on the side. I was in medical sales for 7 years, so absolutely nothing to do with local newsletters, media, digital media, anything. So did it on the side, hired a writer, kind of hired some freelance social media help because I had no clue what I was doing, and kind of started learning the industry, learning how to make a local newsletter work here in Kansas City, and then took the leap to do it full time in March of 2024. So I've been doing it full time about a year and a half, a little more. We send daily, so a little different than a lot of other local newsletters, which is a grind, but it's my full time job now. So that's the 2-minute version of KC Daily.
Okay, awesome. No, I appreciate it. So yeah, there's definitely some interesting things going on here. Number one, you started it with people who, basically, I don't know it's not a franchise, not like maybe kind of like a licensing agreement, or I don't know. How would you describe what you've got going with these guys?
Yeah, so we have co-ownership of KC with them. I think their goal initially was to branch out to other markets, but they kind of just stopped when they launched. They launched one in Kansas City and then Little Rock, Arkansas, in addition to Northwest Arkansas. So they kind of stopped there. So I wouldn't say it was a franchise or national expansion, but they did expand to those two markets after NWA Daily.
Okay. So yeah, that piece is really interesting. The fact that you're in a really big metro area, most people, I mean, there's obviously people doing that, but I think especially in my world, it's usually like trying to find a more niche area. So I think the fact that you're doing it in a really big metro has I assume a lot of pros and cons, which we can get into. Doing it daily, again, there are a few people doing it daily on the kind of more entrepreneurial side, but that's mostly not super common. The companies that a lot of companies do daily, but they're usually, bigger brands like the 6 a.m. cities, right?
Yep.
So, so I think you've got a lot of interesting insights to share here. So, yeah. So I think my first question though is, you said you hired a writer and freelance people, but this was when you were starting. Now you're full time. How did that transition go? Or how many people do you have today? How much support do you have other than yourself?
So in Kansas City, it's just myself.
Okay.
So since it's my full-time job, I've
Okay.
kind of been able to undertake writing the newsletter, curating content, running our socials, working with our advertising partners. So it's a lot, but being my full-time job, it makes it a lot easier.
Mhm.
I always tell this story when I was doing it on the side in medical sales. So I was in the OR, the operating room, selling orthopedic equipment. And one day my phone rang when we had just started Casey Daily. My phone rang and I assumed it was like a nurse in another room needing something because I didn't have the number. And I answered the call, and it was one of the first like advertising partners I had talked to. And they were like, "Hey, we want to move forward with this deal." And I was like, "Oh crap." I was literally in the operating room. So I had to step out because I didn't want to lose this deal.
Mhm.
I was like, this is my first advertising deal with real money. And so that was kind of the turning point where it's like, hey, if I'm gonna really commit to this and build it to what it could be, I don't think I can do it on the side, especially in an industry like medical sales. Um, so that was kind of a fun first dip into working with advertisers. But yeah, since it's full time, it's just me. I have a weekly call and keep up with my partners in Northwest Arkansas, but they kind of let me run here and build it however's best.
Nice. Do you have any, like, you don't have a virtual assistant or anything like that? You're just doing it, everything is 100% you?
Everything's 100% me. Yeah. I mean, obviously use some tools and have a tech
Yeah.
stack to kind of help me with things, but no human help
Yeah.
besides myself right now.
Awesome. Well, that's cool, man. All right. Give us some basics on like your numbers and your stats. I know you posted some of your engagement numbers from Beehive today or yesterday, and your numbers are awesome. But yeah, give everybody the kind of general numbers that people regularly think about of subscribers and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah, we have about 26,200 active subscribers, about a 55% open rate, 5.5 to 6% click rate. So, nothing extraordinary, but
Those are really good numbers to me.
yeah,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done a lot of the things that, if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably familiar with, list
Mhm.
health and cleanup. And so I've cut thousands of subscribers
Oh
over the
yeah.
past
Okay.
year and a half. Yeah, yeah. So, there's pros and cons of
Mhm.
cutting subscribers, and I think I definitely recommend it. But we may have cut more than we needed to because we saw a dip in open rates at a time where we think it might have been seasonal, and I cut like 4,000 subscribers because our open rates dropped like 5 to 10%, and then realized like I probably didn't need to cut that many. I probably could have run an automation to get some of these subscribers back. And like I said, just realizing seasonal, changes, people aren't opening as much, open rates dip in the winter,
Mhm.
just midsummer sometimes. So yes, I've cut a lot of subscribers, but also, just it has helped our open rates, engagement rates. Um, One, unique, I guess, aspect of Casey Daily is we have a much larger following on social media, specifically
Okay.
Instagram. Got about 43,000 followers
Oh
there.
wow.
Tends to be decent engagement, which is funny because when I started working on Casey Daily, I didn't even have a personal Instagram. I had a personal Facebook, but never used it. So I knew nothing about social media. Then
Mhm.
I'm thrown in this world of like, hey, you're running a social media channel with a decent following that's reaching a lot of people. So it's been fun to learn social media and kind of reaching a local audience there. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
uh,
no, that I feel like a lot of people that I've had on, including myself, like didn't use Instagram, and it's like it's the biggest channel and the most important, and a lot of us have never really had much experience with it, and you just got to figure it out. And in a way, it's
right.
kind of fun, right? Learning something that people are really paying attention to, and how to create engaging content and try to, I just worked on setting up ManyChat this week to do you are you using ManyChat for you are?
It's funny you say I just started. I had run the free version, so I've been using it about a month. Ran the free
Okay.
version, just upgraded to Pro a couple weeks ago.
Okay. Are you doing the whole like? Are you doing anything more than just hey, when somebody follows you, you send them a message to say hey, you should subscribe to the newsletter? Is that what you're doing?
I've done one post where I did, comment this, and we'll send you this link.
Oh, okay.
I've
What
done
was
that
it?
one. What's that?
What'd you give them? Why would they comment?
It was a guide. So it was,
Okay.
I can't remember if it was last year's. Honestly, I don't remember what the guide was. It was essentially like tease the guide in the post in the carousel. They would comment something, we would DM them the guide. And at the
Mhm.
time, we had gated the guide. So if they
Mhm.
went to the site, they would need to sign up for the newsletter
Mhm.
to get access to the guide. I have thoughts on that. We can get into it. I don't know if it's the best method. I know a lot of people do that, and I think there's pros and cons, but um, now I'm just using ManyChat for when I get a follow.
Mhm.
I have an automated DM says, "Hey, thanks for the follow. I'll also write a newsletter. Check it
Yeah.
out." And it's worked pretty well.
It has.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's slow growth, but it's effective and cheap growth is
Yeah, exactly.
what I've
It's kind
noticed.
of at the cost. It's like why not just set it up? It's because ManyChat is. Are you paying like $15 or $20 a month?
Yeah, 15 bucks a month, and then I built a segment on Beehive so I can see how many people came through that mini chat automation,
Okay.
and I'd have to go update it, but within the first month-ish or a little less, I think I had 60, 65 subscribers come through. So for 15 bucks, that's mental math, 10 to 15
Mhm.
cents a subscriber. So slow, but cheap and effective.
Yeah, and the way I think about this for everyone too, I know I've been harping a lot more and more on the value of Instagram, is it's the discoverability channel, right? Like people don't generally just discover newsletters on their own. That's where the paid meta side comes in. But Instagram, especially if you're doing well, people can discover you there, and then when they find you there, you push them to the newsletter. I think it just makes a ton of sense to do that. So I think everybody should do that. Yeah, let's talk about. So you got 45,000 on Instagram. I didn't realize you were that big there. Let's talk about both of them. So first, let's say the newsletter. Like, how'd you get to 26,000? I assume at least some meta ads. Was it all meta ads?
Yeah, at first we kind of did a blitz through meta ads when we first started. So I think we got to, I don't know, 500 subscribers, word of mouth, just, Facebook groups,
Hmm.
Reddit, things like that. Then we invested fairly heavily up front in meta ads.
Okay.
So we grew almost too quickly, kind of like what I was talking about earlier, where I ended up having to cut. I think I cut 4 to 5 thousand subscribers at one point last year. So we had grown to probably 20 to 25,000 subscribers at one point. I can't remember exactly where we were, but in that range. But our open rate was in the low 40s, mid 40s sometimes, and just through segmenting, realized we had a lot of dead subscribers. So ended up cutting a lot of those subscribers that we paid for through meta ads. And so we had grown to a respectable number, didn't have the revenue to match like what our subscriber number was. So we stopped spending money on meta ads, kind of built up that revenue base, kind of built up our name locally so we get some of these local partners. And then now, essentially 2 years into the newsletter, we have a little bit of a revenue base, and we've gone back to meta ads at a lower spend, but that's been able to kind of provide consistent growth. And then finding other channels that work for growth. So like we were just talking about ManyChat, uh, uh, you know, Instagram content that's either gated or pushes to a piece on Beehive that's captures via pop-up. Um, so we have a lot of like slower growth methods right now, but it's able to, have us incrementally increase our newsletter subscriber list.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds. So I mean, I would consider that kind of relatively standard. What a lot of people are doing. No, you didn't do anything super unique to get to these numbers.
Yeah, I wouldn't say anything out of the ordinary. I mean, obviously, I follow a lot of local newsletter operators, and
Mhm.
I wouldn't say there's one thing that I did that's wildly different than what other
Mhm.
people are doing. Yeah, I think it's interesting, even following the blueprint of Northwest Arkansas, you kind of realize certain things work in certain markets and they don't work in other markets. And my example there is Reddit. I know in Northwest Arkansas they had pretty strong success, you know, writing in Reddit channels, like sharing their stories, sharing their weekend events, and saw growth through that. Whereas Kansas City did not. I had some growth through Reddit, but very little compared to them. And I know there's other operators that have had success with Reddit.
Totally.
Um, I just never did. Maybe I wasn't consistent with it enough, but
Well,
um,
did you? So one of the issues I think with Reddit here, I actually have a question here because I'm thinking a lot about this. Is just like Facebook groups, there's the moderators who you hear these stories where it's like a lot, I think it's more common than not that they don't like people like us because they feel like we're trying to sell something, which of course we're really not at all, which is frustrating because anyway, so that happens in Facebook groups and Reddit groups. But then others, you get the ones that are more open to it and they're happy. And so that's one big thing. The other question I think for you on the Reddit side specifically is were they posting in the typical group that they or Reddit thread or whatever it is that they didn't own, or did they start one, or were they like the moderators of it where they could kind of control it? Because I think that's where the secret sauce is if you can control it.
so you're saying like you become a moderator of a group on Reddit?
That's it. Or Facebook.
Yeah.
Correct.
Or Facebook, yeah. I mean, I never did that, but that would make sense because I ran into that issue of like my
Okay.
post being taken down because I
Hmm.
would, and frankly probably didn't know what I was doing either. I would always be posting stuff from Casey Daily. That was the only thing I posted. Sometimes it was gated content, so of course they'd take that down because they
Yeah.
think it's a paywall, even though
Hmm.
technically it's not.
Hmm.
So it's probably a combination of like me not doing it effectively, but also just yeah, it's hard to know the moderators and you know be able to crack like get in good with them just because you don't know that I don't know them personally.
Hmm.
But that's an interesting thought, kind of starting your own
Oh yeah.
Reddit group or Facebook group. That's something I
Hmm.
never did.
Or so this is something I'm thinking a lot about of starting your own. The problem with that, of course, is you're starting from zero, and how are you going to get people in? So that's a challenge. And then the other one, I haven't heard of anybody really doing this. I don't think on Reddit, although I'm sure it happens, which is just like Facebook groups. Can you buy your way in? Right? Can you go to them and say, hey, I'll give you this money? I mean, I would imagine most of the people, especially on the Reddit side, are not monetizing, or if they are, they're probably doing a very poor job of it. Facebook groups, it's a little more common for people to understand the value of them and try to monetize them, but you still constantly hear about people who just they started it in 2009 or 2012 because they just wanted a place to chat with their neighbors, and they've just been doing it ever since because of inertia. And so if you go in there and say, hey, I'll give you $1,000, like holy crap, not only do they get the $1,000, they don't have to do any more work. So it's like so it can be a win-win. I've heard of people getting 50,000 person Facebook groups, like good ones, for free. I just saying, hey, I'll take this off your hands. A lot of them are just like, this is work that I feel guilty that I have to do. But if they know somebody's going to take it over who will keep it, they'll do it. So yeah, I
Hmm.
think there's a huge play in all of this, in my opinion. It's just on the buying side or the taking over side. It just totally depends on how smart the people in your area are.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Again, like I said earlier, it kind of you got to understand the market that you're in, and some things will work for some markets based on size, demographics, population, the age you're targeting, and then some things just fall flat. And that's the beauty of running a
Mm.
local newsletter and kind of digital media in general is if things don't work, you can move on from them. Like
Yeah.
you're out some time, maybe a little bit of money, but if things aren't working, move on. And I've moved on from so many ideas, both with growth and just content and everything local news. If things don't work, move on. If they do work, stick with them, improve them.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah,
No, tell me. I actually want to hit on that in terms of content because I want to get into like the big city, versus the suburb or smaller area. Before that, though, on Instagram, how'd you get 45,000? Like, is there anything that you can attribute to getting that large? I mean, those pretty impressive numbers.
yeah. What comes to mind is a few specific posts that went viral, not
Mm.
not truly viral, but viral
Locally,
locally.
virally. Yeah.
One of them I like. It's the dumbest video ever. I hesitated posting it.
It's
We had a
always the
huge
one you hesitate that ends up being the one that
I
crushes.
know. It's
Yeah.
always the one you don't want to post or like you put little effort into
Yep.
that like goes off and then you
Hmm.
spend a couple hours like putting together nice slides
And
and
that one
information.
goes nowhere. Yep.
But anyways, we've had a few posts like this, but this one specifically, we had a big snowstorm here in Kansas City, and I had to go shovel the driveway, and I told my wife, I was like, hey, I'm gonna go film myself like a dad in Kansas City, like gearing up for my Super Bowl because like there's a foot of snow and I get to go take care of it. And so I filmed it, not even that great of quality. Like I'm not a content creator in the slightest, but put this, video together of me getting all my snow gear on and going out and shoveling a foot of snow and put some funny music behind it. And it took off and got thousands of shares. And with that, thousands of followers. Like I'd have to go look at that post specifically, but I bet you that post alone got me 2,000, 2,500 followers. And so we've had a few examples. That was the most successful, but had a few examples like that where posts just kind of get circulated really quickly. Um, Honestly, I did one just the other day. I took a shot of the KC skyline and made it, using like an AI tool, made it look like the Upside Down from Stranger Things.
Oh my,
Released it on Stranger Things Day, and I think it has 17,000 likes and thousands of shares, and
dude, that's
like
awesome. That's a great idea too. Good, congrats on that. That's
yeah, and
awesome.
it took me 10 minutes to put that together. And I say all this saying like I get tons of followers from posts like that. However, I don't necessarily think it's the best. I mean, I could go into a can of worms here, but you get a huge following because they see that one post and they think that's the kind of content you post. Like the snow video, for example. I'm not a content creator. That's really the
Yeah.
only video I've ever posted where it's like me making a funny video. Um, so like they follow and then, they're not engaging with my normal organic content. So like I have a huge boost in the following, but also don't see like an increase in
Well,
engagement
so that's
necessarily.
that's actually a really interesting thought, and you could almost make the what we talked about earlier analogous in the newsletter side of should you cut people who aren't opening. Again, there's pros and cons to both ways, but especially I would say on the Instagram side, again, we're generally dealing with less sophisticated advertisers, right? So I think on the newsletter side, but especially on the Instagram side, what they're looking at and what they want to see is how many followers do you have, right? Like I don't think most of them are not digging into your engagement per post or anything else. They just want to see, oh my God, you have 45,000 people following you, right? Where if you had 20,000 with way higher engagement, even if each post got more engagement, it would still probably look worse to an advertiser, right? So, um, I get your point is 100% valid. I guess the question is, if you had to choose one, it's kind of binary. Do you want more followers who maybe won't love most of your content, or do you want fewer followers who like more of your content? What would you choose?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think should be true for most, not only newsletter operators, but just, social media content managers is you want a big following that can uh, push those followers to something else. So for me, I would love to grow a big following, but if zero of them sign up for the newsletter, then it's kind of a moot point because my bread and butter product is the newsletter. The majority of my revenue comes to the newsletter. So that's why I like to find these things like ManyChat and guides that can take some of that audience and push it to the newsletter. Like if I were to wake up overnight with 100,000 Instagram followers, but none of them signed up for the newsletter. For me, I mean, it's great. It's great for visibility locally, but like, it's really not as exciting as it should be.
Well, why?
Um,
Let me, if you don't mind me, just kind of like maybe a little bit pushing back or asking you. A lot of the people who've been on recently with me, or one of them is going to be on next week. I'm very excited to talk to him. Some people who are crushing it on Instagram, they are monetizing their Instagram extremely well, and I think both of them would say, and others I've talked to as well, that they're making more money from pitching. Hey, I'll make videos for you on Instagram than they are from the newsletter. So, is this something that you just kind of how do you think about the fact that maybe you could monetize the Instagram directly?
Yeah, I think there's truth to that. It kind of depends what kind of content you post on Instagram too, because I'm not going out and creating a lot of videos. I'm not like creating influencer type
Yeah.
content. I'm not doing the talking head videos. I know a lot that people have had success with
Mhm.
that. Um, I don't really have a method to my madness with social media. I've put because it's just me and I put a lot more focus in the newsletter. I wouldn't necessarily say like I have this type of content that I'm posting on Instagram. Whereas if I had kind of my type of content, it might be easier to, go to these local businesses or events and say, hey, this is the type of content I do. Do you want me to cover yours? Do exactly what I do and, charge for it. Essentially, what I'm doing is it's mostly local events that advertise in the newsletter, and then we bundle it with a social media post. And generally, events do the best on Instagram. So we'll kind of bundle those two together, and then I'll just post like a reel if I go to the event, or if they want to increase ticket sales before the event, they'll send me pictures and I'll post there. Um, so I guess to answer your question, I could probably be more creative with how I monetize my Instagram. I just frankly don't have the capacity
Yeah,
and
yeah.
but I do think you can do it. I just think for my setup, it's like I monetize through the newsletter. It's easier for me. So I'd rather use my Instagram to drive an audience to the newsletter rather than just directly monetizing the Instagram. Um,
So yeah, that totally makes sense. I think what you're saying is, if I can repeat back what I think you're saying is, number one, it's just you. So how much capacity do you have? Even if these people wanted, they're not going to pay you a bunch of money to put a carousel up. Oh, go buy something at Billy's shop. That's not, you would have
right.
to go make the video, make good content, which you obviously don't have capacity for. Um, so I guess the question, because I'm in the same boat, of course, right? I am thinking about, and this is of course not easy, but of, can you find somebody to do it for you, right? Like, if in theory you had, which again you'd have to probably do on your own on the sales side, but if you had people saying, hey, I'll pay you $500 or $800 for a reel, could you go find a local creator who would go do it for $200, and then you're just keeping the difference? I do know somebody, I haven't spoken to them yet, I probably mentioned this on the show, but there is somebody I think who is doing this like in that exact fashion of, like, they're not their employee or anything, they're just like, hey, I'll pay you, I don't know what the number is, let's just assume, like, hey, I got this deal for a thing, I'll pay you half of whatever I get, like, go make the video, right? And they
Yeah.
don't have to do anything except make a video. And for young people especially, making social media content's like fun for them.
Yeah. And a lot of times they're getting a free meal out of it too,
Yeah, if it's
some
restaurant.
sort
Yeah.
of free experience. And
Yeah.
that is something I've thought about. I haven't put into place, but just, frankly, in my situation with work and I got
Yeah.
3 kids at home, it's like I don't have the time to go out
Yeah.
on Tuesday night to go to this
Of
grand
course.
opening and go highlight this
Right.
restaurant. But I know at least in Kansas City, there's a million content creators, some
Mhm.
with smaller following. Like I've had this conversation, with my partners and with myself of like, I just need to reach out to them and
Yeah.
try to strike up a partnership. Because then not only do they get to do what they're already wanting to do of going to get free meals and post content, but they might get a little money on the side if it's a paid deal.
And
Um,
they get a bigger reach. This is where I think about it too. Now, maybe a lot of these creators aren't smart enough to think about it this way, but if let's say you're just starting out and you have 3,000 followers and you're making content, and your Instagram, generally they just put their Instagram as Joe Schmo. It's just me, and I make content about Kansas City. It's like,
yeah.
that's going to be way harder for them to grow, to monetize, and everything. But if they can be underneath your brand, you already have 40,000 followers. You already have business relationships. You already, you have all of these things that they don't have. Why would they not want to glom onto you, right? Like, this is why, I mean, this
Mhm.
happens in all kinds of business, especially media businesses, right? It's why you want to be a reporter at the New York Times and not just writing the same content on your own blog, right? Like, they have the audience, they have the value and the advertiser relationship. So again, not a lot of creators will necessarily get that, but some of them will. I mean,
Yeah.
so I think it's worth pursuing and see what
Yeah.
comes from it. Yeah.
It's always worth a conversation. The worst
Yeah,
they can say is like, no, we're not
exactly.
interested.
And you're in the same boat you're in anyway.
And that's kind of like I was talking about earlier, that's kind of the beauty of, building something your own, whether it's a local media company or something else. It's like you can just try things. You just do
Yeah,
it.
I love it. You just do
Like,
things.
you've had Michael Kaufman on before. He's kind of the
Yeah.
king of this. You just try things. And if they
Yeah.
don't work, move on. If they do
That's right.
work, stick with them and improve them. And one thing I've gotten from him and a handful of other people is like, ask your audience what they want. Like, don't just
Mhm.
run things and spend all this time building something that your audience doesn't want. Just ask them.
Mhm.
And that's something I've done more of recently is just ask folks what they want, what they give a thumbs up, give a thumbs down, um, and then run with what they're interested in. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
it's been interesting.
Well, I think this is where the conversations I've been having the last couple weeks, especially, I mean, geez, even this week, um, a lot of people, I've talked to some very successful people who are just super interested in what we're all doing, right? I'm putting myself out there even more from the B2B side, right? Connecting with, investor types or just, wealthier people, thinking through, like, where are smart places to put money or energy, and local media is such a, they're all excited about it, right? And part of that is too, number one, we're riding with the trend of people are going to want more local as AI makes trust way less. So people are only going to trust what they know locally. I've talked about this a bunch. But I think the other thing, and I even just had another conversation literally yesterday that kind of opened my mind to another possibility. in local. I don't want to get into it now because it's still fresh, but you can just do so, there's so many things you can do. Like angles you can take at this, spin-offs, side businesses, like there are so many things to do. It's almost unlimited. So it's great for people like me and also terrible when you have your ADHD entrepreneur brain of, oh, what could I do? It can be very overwhelming, but it's also awesome because there are so many things you can try. Some won't work. There's also, to your point, I want to get into the Kansas City side um, of how certain areas, like again, Michael Kaufman, good example. I think there's a lot of things he does that wouldn't work elsewhere, and there's probably a lot of things that work elsewhere that wouldn't work for him, because each location is different. Even if you just say the difference between suburbs and big cities, right? Which I want to ask you about. So, wanted to tell you real quick about 3 ways I can help you. So the first way is join our free Discord. So I opened a Discord. I want to be able to chat with listeners here. I get so many ideas from you guys. I want to have some of you on the show. I want to help as much as I can, reasonably, of course. It's going to be free. So just jump in there, ask me questions. I'll host some office hours occasionally, and let's see how we can help each other. Number 2 is our software that we built called Local Newsletter OS. It's what we're using to help us streamline all of our processes. Creating a local newsletter is complex on the internet, going to so many different sites, using AI tools. We basically streamline this all into one so that it's much simpler for to use and for your team. It's really a great software that we're going to build into something truly amazing over time. Right now, it just helps with your newsletter. Over time, it will also help with your website and directory and all kinds of things. So jump on there. Again, the resources for both of those are on localmediahq.com. Finally is helping you actually consistently build your newsletter. So we've got options for do it yourself, where we give you all the tools, training, software, all of it. We've got one where we kind of do it with you, which is, consulting plus doing your growth and meta ad side. And then of course we have it done for you where literally we will do everything. So all of this stuff you can get on localmediahq.com. So go over there, check it out, and back to the show. I'm curious. Yeah. Tell us, how you think about what you're doing in Kansas City being, a much larger metro, and how that, I mean, you may not know how that differs from, say, like me and a lot of people in Leander, which is just a little suburb. How does that go as far as content?
Yeah, in terms of content, it's almost like drinking from a fire hose. Kansas City's not the biggest metro, but we have, 2.5 million people, and
That's
I
good.
generally cover the entire metro, and so there is a lot of content. And so what I've had to realize is I am not my audience. I am one person. I write for 26,000 plus. It's like what I'm interested in isn't necessarily what my audience is interested in. And that's taken years to realize, like, hey, I'm interested in this restaurant opening downtown, and I'll post something about it in the newsletter, but it won't get that many clicks or that much engagement. So like I've had to learn over the past 2 years of like, hey, I'm writing for a large audience that spans a metro of 2.5 million, that spans, I don't know, 30 miles, 30-mile radius. So trying to learn what my audience likes, but also still covering the entire metro. So if you don't know Kansas City, this, you may not understand this, but the Kansas City downtown, right north of it is the Missouri River, and then north of the Missouri River is called the Northland, which is kind of a general term. And the Northland always kind of gets left behind, or so they think. So I get emails all the time. Hey, you need to cover more of the Northland. Cover more of the
Mhm.
Northland. You're forgetting the Northland. And that's kind of not just me, but it's kind of just a shtick in Kansas City is like the Northland gets forgotten about. Uh, Whereas, and then Kansas City is also unique because we're split by a state line. So
Two states.
half the metros in Missouri, half the metros in Kansas. And there's this
Yep.
like there's an actual border war between Missouri and Kansas, like the schools, but
Mhm.
there's also just this unofficial like Kansas side versus Missouri side.
Okay.
And so even, posting random content, it's like sometimes I'll get emails like, hey, you're always posting about, Johnson County, which is in Kansas, but you're never posting about, Clay County, which is in Missouri. Um, so like it's taken me time to realize like what my audience engages with and what locations to highlight. Um, Whereas like if I were in a town of, 40 or 50,000, it's a little bit easier to say, here's the content for the day. It's really, frankly, maybe it's the only news going on. Whereas I have to decipher like lots of information, understanding my audience, and then putting that in the newsletter. And am not going to say I'm an expert at it. I'm always tweaking too. Always, saying, okay, I used to cover more developments. Developments interest me. don't necessarily get the best engagement. A new apartment complex in this part of town. Um, so yeah, it's just it's a constant learning kind of you know experiment of understanding your audience and what plays and then what doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a broad answer, but
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
no, I mean, I think that you kind of hit on it of the problem of too much content for too much area, essentially, potentially, with not enough space to cover it all. And where, a lot of people, like in my case, like, well, was there enough news? And in your case, it's daily. So, but even still, I bet you have enough content where in a city of 100,000 or something, you may, even at one or two times a week, may struggle to have enough good content. Now, events, you're probably okay. But in our case, even on like the news and like what's happening around us that matters, you can go a week and be like, oh crap, I don't know if anything's even that interesting.
yeah.
So you kind of have the opposite problem, right?
Yeah, I'll say it one day, I think maybe I've run it more than once. I took a poll on our newsletter of, would you be interested in a newsletter that's specifically covering your suburb or county? And I
Hmm.
think I had like a 90% positive response rate. So the answers were
Okay, not
yes, I'd be
surprising.
interested, or no, I prefer full metro coverage. And I think I've run it a couple of times over the past year. I've run that same poll. So, I probably I'd have to go look again, but maybe three or 400 responses. And like 90% of them say they'd be interested in a newsletter that specifically covers their suburb of Kansas City. And so, maybe in the future that's something I pursue, but like
Yeah.
Overland Park is one of the bigger suburbs of
Mhm.
Kansas City. It's like Overland Park could have its own newsletter. Overland Park could have its own daily newsletter, maybe, where
Like
some other
two or three
newsletters
times a week.
will
Yeah.
be weekly. But I think there's an appetite for that of,
Oh, yeah.
metro coverage like Kansas City, or if you're in a bigger area, but also like, I mean, yeah, you're in the Austin area and you have
Yeah.
newsletters. It's like you can kind of segment this audience and kind of build, a newsletter that may not be as often, but much more hyper local. Um, and I think there's an appetite for that. I guess there is in Kansas City. I know there is. I've asked my audience.
I mean, I think there's zero question. There's appetite for it. The question just becomes value, value accrual versus the effort it takes to do it, right? So,
Yes.
but I would like to say, because I think you're spot on here of, and again, it doesn't even have to be a metro. It could be a state. Let's just talk about, I don't know if you saw my episode with Nate Spangle. He kind of got, I was already thinking a lot of these things, but he's kind of doing it, which is, in his case, it's a state thing of the state of Indiana, but you could say treat Kansas City as the same, right? It's like the big overarching newsletter or brand, and then you have sub brands underneath it per location, or again for an Overland Park, or say for the four suburbs, something like that. I posted about this yesterday or on Twitter about doing what Nate's doing. Like in your case, could it be a Missouri newsletter? Or in your case, you'd have to have two state newsletters, but whatever. Let's just say Missouri. So you have a Missouri newsletter, and then you have a Kansas City one, and then you have an Overland Park or I don't know, whatever the suburbs are, or St. Louis newsletter. And the value there is you're kind of building the regional media brand, and of course that the value accrual there is going to be much higher than just a single one. And the other big benefit, as Nate talked about, and I think is generally very accurate, is it would make it much easier to get in front of the bigger players for advertisers, right? Because I'm in your case, you're already in a bigger city. Let's just say, in theory, if I only had my one newsletter in Leander, it's like, okay, well, in the Austin area, the bigger brands are going to be like, that's cool, but like I'm trying to reach like everyone in the Austin metro, not just people in Leander. So if I had, well, I do, but like, if you had a major Austin one and then the five major suburbs, now you can be, in this case, call it regional to the metro of Austin. Be easier to convince those bigger players to advertise. Um, I mean, it sounds like you've kind of thought about this in general, like casually, but it sounds like you maybe haven't thought about it. Like, are you seriously going to do it soon?
Yeah, I haven't put pen to paper and looked at that. And you know, to your point, that it's nice because if you had, one overarching newsletter, the whole metro, and then five sub newsletters that are
Mm-hmm.
weekly in specific geographical
Mm-hmm.
areas, you're going to get the bigger brands, the bigger centers in town that want to advertise everywhere. They already do. They're advertising in magazines,
Mm-hmm.
newspapers. Kansas City has like local news, like Johnson County Post just covers Johnson County, things like that. And these big brands are advertising in all of them, and they
Mm-hmm.
would continue to do that. Whereas then you open up a new avenue of like a small business that's just in, Leawood. they're not necessarily trying to reach someone in Liberty, which is
Exactly.
45 minutes
That's right.
away. Then you can get them, and they're never going to
Mhm.
advertise a big newsletter because
Mhm.
either it's out of their budget or it's just too broad an area. And
Yeah.
they're like, I'm trying to reach this exact area. So then you can double dip and get those small
Mhm.
businesses as well as the big brands that are trying to reach the whole metro. So
Totally.
that's been my thought. Again, similar to what we talked about earlier, it's kind of just capacity at this point.
Yeah.
It's like I try to stay away from using too many AI agents. I really use very, very little, and it's something that's different for me and something I've kind of, built myself is like I lean away from AI a little bit more than others. And to do that right now, I would need to use AI a lot more
Mhm.
heavily. Just have made that choice to
Well,
not.
yeah.
Um,
I think the again, there's a book called Who Not How that I'd encourage everybody to read. Even it doesn't mean you need to follow it 100%, but it's great to kind of sometimes change your frame sometimes, but to think through, is the play here, in theory, if you could, again, it's hard to find this right person, but assume you could, where you could basically hire somebody to be in charge of each of the suburbs, right?
yeah,
And especially in this case, if it was a once a week newsletter in the suburbs, you don't need to hire somebody for full time. This could be somebody for cheap part time, and and then you have all the infrastructure to manage advertisers to help them with the stuff that they're not good at, right? I mean, in a weird way, this is kind of at the time, you're obviously an expert now, but at the time, that's why you got help from the NWA Daily guys, I think, right? That you needed
100%.
their playbooks and their processes and they set everything up. Well, now you do the same thing for somebody in Kansas City suburbs. Again, this is how I'm thinking. I'm building software literally to help make this easier. But I also think on the, I don't know what you call it, agency side or whatnot, similar processes. So yeah, I'd encourage you to at least think about that. I mean, it's not easy though, because otherwise I'd be doing it everywhere and I'm not.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's yeah, it to build something that's of quality just takes time. Like you can
Mm-hmm.
in today's culture and with like we're talking about AI agents, like you can slap something together pretty quickly, but if
It's
you're
not going to
building
be
like
good.
an effective brand, you want it to be quality. And
Exactly.
that's what I'm 100% focused
And
on.
a face. That's where like
Yes.
people
Yeah.
trust people. And that's why I think the 6 a.m. city types, um, I mean, they obviously do well in a certain way, but I think in other ways they're generally not. And I think it's because they don't have that real face. Maybe they do in some of their big markets, maybe. But I think in general, what we think of brands like that is they don't have somebody who has a stake in it locally and truly cares and is out at events and going to city council, well, not city council, but maybe, but chamber, like going to chamber events, meeting with business owners, maybe filming short form content locally. Like they don't have that because there's nobody invested enough to do it, because they don't have any stake in it. They just, if they have writers at all, it's just they get their salary, they're going to do the minimum they can do and then hang out at home because they don't have a stake. And I think that's the big piece that people like us are doing that is different from these bigger companies trying it, and why I think we're all going to win long term where they're not. And I'm betting a lot on that. So yeah. All right, Nick, let's talk about monetization. That's what everybody wants to hear. Saved the best for last, right? So tell me about monetization, how you're doing, strategies, anything you can share that might help people who are most likely struggling or wanting some new insights there.
Yeah, yeah. So we kind of mentioned this earlier. Majority of my bread and butter product is the newsletter, and that includes the monetization. So I would say roughly 90% of our revenue comes through newsletter advertising. And where I found my sweet spot in Kansas City, and this has taken 2 years to get to this point, is building relationships with recurring advertisers and these recurring advertisers that have marketing budgets. So when I first started, I was reaching out to all these small businesses, these
Mhm.
new small businesses that were opening, and saying, "Hey, if you want to advertise, offer this newsletter, and we charge this for growth," and realizing they have $0 for marketing. It's just that's not who I should have been targeting, and it took me a long time to realize that. But now getting into these bigger brands, centers, just recognizable players in the community that have marketing budgets. And first of all, introducing them to Casey Daily. At first I was coming to them and saying, "Hey, you've never heard of me? Give me $1,000 to advertise." Like, I didn't know what I was doing, and I tried to take what worked in NWA and apply it here, and it was just a mess. But now I've kind of built the KC Daily name where I'm recognizable, so I can approach these recognizable brands. And another key that I've leaned into, and I saw someone else posting about this the other day on LinkedIn. I don't remember who it was. Maybe it was you. Uh, was getting in good with PR firms,
Yeah.
PR communications, advertising
I think it
firms.
was John from Scottsdale, and then I reiterated what he
It
said.
was. It was,
Yeah.
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 Apolinar. I don't know how to say
Yeah.
his last name, but
Yeah.
that's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
But if you can get in with these PR firms that have multiple clients, like these
Mhm.
clients already have budgets big enough to pay for a PR, marketing, and
Exactly.
advertising
Yeah.
firm. So,
Yeah.
like,
They have to
frankly,
spend the money. Why would they have them? Why would you pay a
yeah,
PR
exactly.
firm or a marketing agency to not spend money marketing? That would be stupid.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's been my biggest point of success fairly recently, like the back
Yeah.
half of this year and then going into next year is getting in good with these PR and marketing and advertising firms who have multiple clients who are big community players and then running successful campaigns, even if it's small, just like a couple $100 for a big client. And then it works well for that PR firm. So then they're going to go to their other clients or they're going to go to their coworkers at that same firm and say, hey, we've had a good experience with, this guy at Casey Daily. You should look at this for, this other client that, we work with at the firm. And that's where, as we end 2025 and move into 2026, that's where I'm finding my sweet spot is that route right there. And there's still plenty of room to grow. There's plenty of like recognizable agencies that I'm not in good with, but there are a few that, I'm on a first name basis with a handful of big players there. And, we've had good conversations of like, hey, I'm going to present this to this client, or I think you're a good fit for this. Um, that's where, and I don't know if that's as common in smaller markets. I mean, maybe that's a little more unique to Kansas City
Mhm.
or a bigger market. But that's where I've been able to find my sweet spot.
Yeah,
Um,
that definitely sounds like one of the advantages of being in a bigger market is there's more bigger businesses, which means there's more PR firms and marketing agencies. So that's actually a great point.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely think there's truth to that. But that's what's worked for me, monetization wise. And again, like we talked about earlier, 90% of my revenue comes through the newsletter advertisements. We get some through social media, but usually it's bundled onto newsletter packages.
Mhm.
And then we also have a dine card. So one of the ideas that did work that
Mhm.
we stuck with was essentially what Michael Kaufman did in the Catskills was make a dine card. So we partnered with 12 local restaurants this past year to offer a 20% discount, like a punch card. Um, Kind of did it on a whim, and it did fairly well. So
Did
we're
you
running it.
sell it or you sold it?
We sold the card for $25. Yes.
Okay.
So the rest. So I mean, so it's called the Daily Dining Card. Restaurants they get free advertising through our newsletter, so we don't charge the restaurants to be on it. They just have to offer the 20% discount one time per card holder, and then we advertise each restaurant individually in the newsletter and then on our social media channel. So they're reaching a lot of people with essentially
Mhm.
free advertising. We
Yep.
set it at 20% because hopefully they're still making their margins. If someone
Mhm.
comes in at a $100 dinner, hopefully they're still making margins. It's not like, a huge discount,
Mhm.
but um, that's worked very well. And so I'm in the final stages of finalizing next year's card. We'll roll that out in January. But that's really the only
Nice.
physical product we make,
Mhm.
if you call it a physical product. It's mostly I dabbled in merch, didn't work. Kind of knew it wouldn't work, but I thought I'd
Mhm.
test it anyway. Um, just because you can just do things.
Yeah.
Didn't really work for me, so probably won't pursue that really hard unless something I can get a really good idea. Um, so yeah, those are ad sales to the newsletters. Number one, probably 90%. A little bit of social media, a little bit of Dine Card, and then we do have a fan club, which is essentially our premium program.
Mhm.
They get a free Dine Card, and we do some exclusive giveaways for our fans.
Okay.
So we have about 60 paying members, but it's mostly just goodwill.
Is it
Uh,
five or $10 a month or something or?
Yeah, they can choose. So there's a
Oh,
$5 tier and $10 tier. $10 gets you a free dine card. $5 gets you just access to random giveaways throughout the year.
okay.
Um, so um, yeah, that I don't know. It's hit or miss there. I think
Yeah.
that's a better program for actual like editorial newsletters where they're
Mhm.
providing exclusive content. I'm no none of my fans are getting exclusive content or stuff
Mhm.
that's available. It's mostly just goodwill and
Yeah.
supporting
Yeah. Just
local.
the buy me a coffee kind of concept.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that
Get,
is a little bit of revenue there, not much, but
okay.
yeah, that's kind of a breakdown of.
So no, that's good. So just I want to just make sure for myself and for probably people listening, when it comes to the PR marketing agency thing, I mean, I totally get it in concept. I mean, are you talking about literally like, hey, go Google who are the big marketing agencies in Kansas City, and then cold calling, cold emailing them, and getting on the phone with them? I mean, is that basically what you did, or is there some sort of other way you did that?
Uh, I did do some of that. I wouldn't say it was the most effective route.
Okay.
What worked for me is getting on press release lists. So, earned media. So I get press releases, more of the PR side, communication side, rather than the advertising side, which a lot of firms do both, is just start covering, when they send you press releases, start covering it organically. Covering the stuff that you'd put in your newsletter anyway, and then telling them like,
And then
hey, thank you for sharing. I'm going
yeah.
to have this in tomorrow's newsletter. And then
Okay.
following up with them saying
Yeah.
like, hey, in case you didn't see it, here's the article I wrote about this event at, Power and Light or whatever it may be. And then, that's their job, is to get PR for their client. So that
And
you are giving
you're helping
them
them.
gold to bring to their
Yep.
client. And then, you know, at first I probably was a little more direct than I should have been, being like, hey, if you have any paid media opportunities, I'm all
Hmm.
ears. Whereas now I realize, like, building that relationship, showing up to their
Hmm.
events, they'll do media nights or media days at these restaurants, meeting them face to face.
Hmm.
That's been one of my biggest deals this year, is because I went to this event. Frankly, I didn't really want to go to. You know, it was like 5 o'clock at night. I got 3 kids. It was chaos. I had to get all the way across town. And, but I showed up and I got to chat for a long time with the head of this PR firm, and um, it was just a really good conversation. And so just kind of warming up to these
Yeah.
these players at these firms. Um, but yeah, I mean, that it just takes time. I mean, that's kind of the short answer, is like just building relationships. And I
Yeah.
think that's a con of a bigger area, is there's more to do and more people to get in front of, whereas it's a little
And
bit easier in a smaller community. You can kind of be
yeah.
a bigger space. Um, but yeah,
No, that's
that's
actually really good. Dude, I hadn't even thought about that. I think that's great advice about, when you get a press release, put it in the newsletter, which, like you said, you probably would have anyway, if it's, at least somewhat interesting, a restaurant's opening or whatever, and then letting them know you did it and saying, hey, I just sent this. I put this in the newsletter. I don't know if you saw it. This went out to 26,000 people. They're gonna be like,
Mhm.
who, 26,000? Wait, what do I not know about this? Then they're gonna dig into you, and then you just try to build a relationship. I think that's a really, really
Yeah.
killer way to do. I mean, that's just good advice in general, right? Just give first. Um,
Yeah.
is essentially what you're doing, and then when you do that, people want to reciprocate, or at a minimum, they want to know who you are and why you're being kind and helping them without expecting anything in the short term. And then that's how you build relationships. And then they want to, once they know you're doing something awesome, like in your case, 26,000, they should be advertising with you. So it makes sense.
Right. Yeah, and one step further that has helped more work, but is providing metrics. So through Beehive, it's easy. You can
Okay.
actually track their links, and then you can share that, being like, "Hey, I shared this event and it did really well. Like it
Mm,
got 200 clicks in one day."
mm,
And so keep this information coming, and they can appreciate that. And if they really want to look into it, they can see that. They can go on their end and see web
mm,
traffic if they're
mm.
that serious, and they can back it up and be like, "Oh yeah, we did get a lot of traffic from this Casey Daily." So.
Yeah. No, that's
That's
interesting. Again, thinking through probably the downside, though, again, for people who aren't in big metros is, like we said, fewer PR agencies, fewer marketing agencies.
Mhm.
But even as far as, again, always going back to first principles or the very beginning here, how'd you get on those lists? Did you do any work to do that? Did they kind of find you and just kind of they throw people, media companies on lists without really asking? How'd that go?
Yeah, I don't remember every situation, because I'm on a lot of press release now, which is great. I don't remember how I got in front of all of them, but one area that worked for me is, we saw faster growth through our Instagram. So what I would do is, even when we were a little bit smaller, let's say 15, 20,000 followers on Instagram, I would DM these, whether it's a restaurant, whether it's a business, whether it's an event, and those Instagram accounts are usually managed by someone at that firm. Usually it's like a fresh grad or like an associate, and just saying, hey, we covered this, or like just shooting them a DM, just whatever it may be. That's been an easy way to get your foot in the door. Better for me than a cold email to someone at the firm.
Mm,
Just, I don't, that's one way I've capitalized on having a decent Instagram following, is like, just DMs. Because if someone sees you have 20,000 followers and you get a DM from them, they're going to read it at least. And a lot of times they're going to respond. And so that was kind of a warm lead for me. Um, frankly, I don't remember off the top of my head how I got on all the lists, but I think once you're on some and you start covering these events, people start talking within the firm, and so then you'll get press releases from multiple people within the same firm.
Yeah.
At least I have. So, um,
Yeah.
yeah, just another way to use your Instagram effectively is.
Yeah. That's awesome. So what has you excited about the future of what you're doing? You know, Casey Daily, I know we kind of talked about maybe, having smaller, more local ones, or yeah, is there anything about the model, the industry, Kansas City? What has you excited for the future?
Yeah, I think Kansas City specifically, like it's metro. There's tons of events. We're it's a relatively small market, but we've kind of brought in a lot of events, and like the World Cup is coming next summer. Frankly, we're the smallest market in North America to get the World Cup. The Chiefs have had a lot of success, so that brings a lot of eyes. Taylor Swift, we have a lot of superstars looking at this fairly mid-sized metro in the middle of the country that doesn't have any business getting the kind of national coverage it does. So like there's a lot of eyes on Kansas City from the national stage. So then if I can be a relatively decent sized media player in the Kansas City metro, it just kind of compounds. So Kansas City, that's a long way of saying I think Kansas City is on the rise and will continue to be on the rise because of some of these successes we've had with events and sporting events and developments. So like we can grow, alongside the city. And then just, in bigger picture in the local newsletter industry, like you were talking about, I think independent newsletters that can put a face to the name, like you can put Nick Hagamann's face to Casey Daily, that immediately separates yourself not only from like national newsletter players, but also just national news and organizations. Like they're kind of seen as like these big players that are all corporate, and like I kind of position myself, and I know a lot of people do, of like, hey, I live right down the street. Just love this city. Like we're bootstrapped, and I just like what's going on. And I'm not doing this as a job. I'm doing it because I love Kansas City and I love seeing what's going on. I think there's a real unique avenue for that, especially in the world of AI, where it's like, hey, I know this guy, and I know I saw him at this event. He was there. So I just think there's a unique opportunity for independent local newsletter operators to separate themselves from where the trend is going of corporations kind of like diving into local and using AI agents to just scrape and pass it along. Like, and I know you're big into this too. Is just
Yeah.
like being at these events, being at these meetings, sitting down for coffee. Like, it goes so much further in today's world than you'd
and,
think.
and it's only gonna be more, right? I mean, another way I think about what you just said is for locals always behind on everything, which is an advantage for us, right? Less
Hmm.
competition, less understanding of what we're doing. But you constantly hear, on national or, call it VC or investors or, business thought leaders talking about how the world is going toward creators, right? We've been doing this for a while in the like fun way with the Mr. Beast stuff. That was whatever the last 5 years. For the last year or two, it's been very B2B creators, right? Like, and it's because people build trust with people, right? Where you can, just like all these podcasts crushing and whatnot. And this is all coming locally. It's like it's gonna get here. I mean, we're already, everybody watching this and you, like, we're already there. But it's essentially when you hear people talking about the creator economy, that's what we're doing, right? We
Hmm.
are creators. We're just doing it in a local way, which is very rarely discussed. But it is the same concept, and this is where the world is going, and we're just there before most. And it's really exciting. So yeah, it sounds like you're doing a killer job in Kansas City. So I'm excited for you, man. This is great. So how can people get in touch with you, or what do you want to share with anybody?
Yeah, to get in touch with me, I'm most active on LinkedIn, in the social media world. So connect with me on LinkedIn, Nick Hagman. It's really the only social media I use personally. Yeah, Casey Daily, on Instagram, caseydaily.com for the newsletter. Yeah, happy to connect, get on a phone call. I've connected with local newsletter operators across the country, or excuse me, across the world. I talked to this guy in England the other day, and it's just fun connecting with other operators and seeing what works and what doesn't. And so yeah, reach out, let's talk, let's find what works.
Awesome. No, I agree. Everyone should be connecting. We have so much to learn from each other because there's so many options, right? As we said before,
Yeah.
it's exciting. Yeah. Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
I appreciate you, Nick. We'll talk again soon. Thanks.
Thank you.
See ya.